Yo, assalamu alaikum, everybody. So yesterday, as you all know, I hosted the gauntlet and made the announcement for the said gauntlet. And I'll be saying that my debate with Apollo didn't exactly go as good faith as I hoped it'd be, but it was definitely something that he drew out, and it's definitely one of my better debates, maybe because he was actually capable of getting refutations, capable of actually arguing instead of running away like Rizhan. He has to go get his haircut. That guy, my bad. That guy. So definitely one of the better substantial debates I have to have. But I've been seeing some people say I lost. Usually usual people who's commenting like three other accounts like VNX VNX clips, or the guy with the E at the beginning of his name, then a bunch of random letters, or Gooner. Mainly just Tron members or just Tron goons in general. The average retards I deal with. Like I meta debated them on the Tron debate about my objection towards P1 and the conditional for, of course, a successful application of more so the successful biological continuity. But that's besides the point. Today, I'm here to address some of the blunders, of course, made within the debate, or what people say is blunders, but my bad for the stuttering. It's just I've had a rough day today. It's not exactly the best going out with my dad. So hopefully I can get that situation sorted out. But more so with the blunders in question. So addressing the main thing with Apollo, like let's say at the beginning, like I'm gonna count Apollo's blunders first. I'm gonna go on my blunders and like give a reason why I think I won that, because I think I won both accounts, and not both accounts, both debates I've had with him, or just discussions maybe. So we were supposed to debate on God's existence, where I took a weak atheistic stance. Well, I just disagreed with the Abrahamic religion's ontology of God. I gave some type of other representative deity, or of course just a different model in question, to where we can apply this as a descriptor towards what we would call as God in some type of formal ontological sense. But he tried to sit there and say my definition was entailing he was entailing my definition through agreement, or my analytics through agreement would entail his definition is out of alignment, which clearly is not. I even brought that up, that his definition was the one who agreed with that, and he gave the Islamic example. So I sat there and basically said that, okay, no, basically, since I'm a weak atheist and my analytics obviously disagree with the Abrahamic religions and deny the existence of such deity, my deity, of course, is in disagreement. Therefore, that should come to the conclusion. I'm not sitting there and bringing up the idea of your definition of analytics disagreeing or being out of alignment, but of course, I'm sitting there saying, oh yeah, my definition is, of course, out of there, right? So his blunder number one is mistracking what I said. Number two, I think when he tried to pressure me on the meta ontological sense, like I don't see why meta ontology would matter besides sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, what do you take existence to be?" Because you could obviously deny concrete things, like God's existence, for an example. So, speaking about concrete existence in question, he made a blunder, specifically saying concrete existence refers to spatial temporal things. No, because you can refer to actually concrete existing things, or just actually concrete things which happen to be the case that they are actually existing. Another thing in question is that, well, not in question, sorry, not refers to the debate, just of course what I'm saying. Another thing in question was the blunder. So, of course, it was the definition for concrete existence, because concrete existence can refer to something that is actual, right? And he tried to use the singularity of a black hole argument for saying, oh yeah, logical possibility, in the sense that it can happen within our reality, therefore logical possibilities are concretely existing. So, number one, um, if it's capable of happening within some type of nomological framework, I would say that changes the laws of like science and what we know about our reality, and of course, that can be put into some type of actual perspective where it's of course capable of happening by the laws of nature, considering that's the nature of a black hole. It's concrete. The laws of nature, of course, happen. So, like, nomology, for an example, his blunder was not recognizing the actual analytics for nomology in question. Nomology refers to the laws of nature and laws of physics. Those things. I could sit there and say, since it's capable of happening and obviously under a framework of nomology like ours, since we have the laws of physics and everything, of course, in our sense, I could sit there and say that can be a law of nature for a black hole, the law of nature for a black hole happening this way, and of course being this way under some type of course, things within that said nature, of course. Like, I could sit there and say, well, yeah, it's just a natural thing for black holes to have this. It just violates physics, but not necessarily the laws of nature, unless you're trying to say the laws of physics are the laws of nature, considering the laws of nature themselves happen to be not consistent with, well, I wouldn't say not consistent, but more so have some type of distinction or analytical distinction when actually referring or indexing towards those two options. So I think considering it not physically being possible is not, of course, be possible by the laws of nature. Unless you could sit there and say that's the laws of physics, but the current laws of physics that we know it break down inside there. So I mean, wouldn't sit there and say that's actually a law of physics, but indeed I could sit there and say it happens by the laws of nature. So another blunder that happened to be the case for that, of course, mentioning the laws of nature thing, because laws of nature, analytically, as I was mentioning, a analytical distinction happens to be the case that, of course, something that is observable and happening within our universe. So nomological frameworks happen under the case of our current principles for our universe, or like some type of framework for that specific thing in question. So that's possible under the laws of nature. Therefore, that's a nomological category, not a like logical scope of possibility. So I can sit there and say that's a category error from under what he's considering when we consider the analytics of our terms in terms of modality or just modal logic. Even if you want to be an anti-realist, of course, since the anti-realist was, of course, being mentioned that. So I think that's a blunder on his part again. I think another blunder on his part was, of course, the semantics. So he presupposed me taking a physicalist type B stance. I know that my semantics may have been wacky, which was induced to being, of course, oh yeah, basically my definition can be, of course, everything within that type of existence would be, physical. So that would be taking the existence to be physical in that sense. So yeah, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Sorry, I'm not running on a script, but yeah, my bad. I forgot what I was gonna argue for, but now I got it again. So here's the thing. I mentioned something bilateral with subjective experience and the definition for those said things. Even then, if you want to say, oh yeah, everything that is physical within existence, since I'm talking about existence itself, you could say there's sets within my definition of existence. There's different types of existences, and I wouldn't want to conflate any type of things with that or take in conflation of stance with existence. Since I even mentioned the bilateral part when I said, oh yeah, there's obviously going to be mind-dependent things or mind-independent things, because the thing in question was my definition, because he said I changed my definition. My definition got forced to change because he wanted to move on from the stupid fucking point in the yes or no questions. The thing is that when I was originally given my definition, I kept saying the fit existence is a thing caused and concretely exists. Basically, is just, of course, caused by a cause, which is not God. He kept confusing me for saying that existence is a cause, which is not God. No, because that's a concrete entity within existence in the first place. Otherwise, of course, if I'm saying that's the existence in the first place, but then there's obviously some type of other existence which grounds that said, not grounds the said thing, sorry. It exists in that first place. It's not entirely existence when you refer to our meta-ontology of our universe and shit like that. Of course, when we talk about our existence as well, obviously there's going to be some type of conflationist stance in there if you want to consider, what do I say, fuck. Yeah, the God's existence point, so I wouldn't necessarily say it refers to a universal thing. So, in that said thing, I even referenced physical things within that existence, so you can actually make an exception and say, oh yeah, there's sets of it, obviously, because I'm agreeing to other types of existences, like mind-dependent things existing, not necessarily inside reality, but of course mind-dependent, because when I mentioned that he was asking the imagination thing, and I said, oh yeah, if you're going to try and use imagination, my thing is bilateral towards existing things in reality. So concrete existence, more so, as I mentioned, the term itself can refer to concrete like things. I even mentioned that at the end of the debate that, oh yeah, these things can refer to something which is a realist thing, and yeah. So he asked me if I agree that non-concrete things can exist, and I said, yeah, I only take concrete things to exist. Which again, under my semantics, would just be, of course, not even under my semantics, under just basic philosophical understanding of the linguistic terminology, would just be in that question, yeah, actually existing in that sense, which is actual existence. I mean, yeah. So his blunder in that part, as I mentioned before, like earlier on to the recording, is that he said only refers to spatiotemporal things, which again is obviously not the case when you refer to it like semantically as well, because you can actually refer to that definition as well, because like there's multiple interpretations informally for the word instead of formal definitions or something like that. Like obviously I'm mentioning the case about actually existing, and I said what's the problem with that specific thing, even though I even mentioned those bilateral things, which was like something said somewhere to the 50-minute mark of the debate recording. But yeah, I said obviously existence would require the physical things, and then I accepted that, oh yeah, obviously it's obviously existing in that case, and yeah, that's also a thing, abiding by the laws of nature in that sense. So I mean, the black hole thing, the singularity, so it's nomologically possible. More so, like if he thinks nomological, if that's a logical possibility, I already explained why that's a category error for him or his substance. But more so, speaking wise, again. Sorry if I'll keep saying the word. What else? Oh yeah, if some people think I'm saying, oh yeah, because I agreed that concrete things exist, and I'm backtracking by saying, oh yeah, I made it only for a conditional for the imagination thing. I said that within the recording is that, oh yeah, I agree to concrete things existing and not, like non-concrete things. So that refers to that question alone. There's nothing else for me to backtrack because I made a conditional on the imagination part that's completely separate. There's no dichotomy with that. There's no relation between it. Like there's no relation for, oh yeah, to mention a connective with or just some type of actual connective to make the point that it's a backtrack, because first of all, if I'm answering the question, that's alone to the question with both options or propositions in question, and secondly, entirely with a conditional, that kind of is the case because of the conflationist mention thing I made, and that refers to the conflationist things about the subjective point and the concrete things with the bilateral point I mentioned. So I made a bilateral point that existence would hold to physical things. When you mention to physical categories, I mentioned that like it doesn't even have to be like the laws of physics aren't necessarily things which can be like, I would say the laws of physics are a descriptor or some type of actual theory as to how our world works. In that case, I would say that's G theory of time, because that's what it seems to be under the analytics. Um, so G theory of time, the black hole stuff, obviously there's space, this and that, like time dilation. If you explain that, basically just relativity, special relativity, the speed formula, distance over time. Um, Even then, that's a theory. Laws of physics are just relativity in general are a theory of understanding. But even then, clearly, because black holes are an example of how our reality can break down physics or what we know to be, I would say that maybe I would take an instrumentalist stance on the laws of physics, because obviously I don't quite agree with the mention of of course, it basically, just being the things for how physical things go, because clearly black holes exist. They have density. There's like things at the singularity point which are clearly concretely existing. I wouldn't say because entirely they well, It's concretely existing in terms of actuality instead of like, oh yeah, spatio-temporal things, because obviously space and time break around it. So I would just refer to that point as being like, by the laws of physics, you could sit there and say the laws wouldn't allow for that. But if you take away the laws of physics point that he made, then you could sit there and say, by the point I made earlier, the laws of physics, they can. And obviously I said because you proved your black hole point with it when I mentioned to the debate. I said that, oh yeah, you clearly proved your point, therefore it's concretely existing, so there's not much to discuss upon. Because, like, he didn't clarify the singularity point. I thought he was just being retarded on the laws of physics. Like, and it's very obvious due to another point I made inside a post, which was about Blue Spirit and his retarded ass. Basically, relativity includes the speed formula as well as distance over time. It's just basic time dilation. If anyone doesn't understand that, go read the fucking post. But yeah. Even then, I don't think it dismisses my point about black holes still working with space time, just not the singularity of a black hole. Singularities seem to not abide by our descriptors for reality, therefore, there could be some type of instrumentalist thing for the laws of physics as a utility as a way instead of actually being an objective example. Because my point was more so talking about mind independence, objective things. So, to also address his definition change, I did not change my definition. I just sat there and said, oh yeah, it's concretely existing, and mentioned the bilateral point. It's bilateral in the sense of physical things existing. It's only, of course, to that. Because I didn't take a physicalism type B sense where, I already explained my semantics. When I say everything, I include, like, sitting there saying everything within that set. That invokes the universal claim about that set, not everything within existence in that set. Not within the set. Everything within existence. I meant to say the set is of course existing within existence, but existence as a whole is not quantified like the set would be. The set is a quantified or quantification of domains, which of course the universal predicate is upon that, and the existential quantifier would be about that. Of course, when you talk about physical things, because obviously and the definition I provided, like, I'm pretty sure I even made the distinction saying that, oh yeah, before that, even then, my definition was, basically a cause that causes existence to exist, which is not God, would cause existence in that case. It's a causation, and reality is concrete, following from that specific entity. And even then, I also brought up the fact to mention that he didn't give an argument for God. There was no argument for God in the first place. We just debated on meta ontology. And even then, I think he made a lot of blunders to actually be discussed about it, or the conversation in general. Because generally speaking, I made the points that I'm trying to bring up right now. I didn't speak about them inside the debate, but I just believe he didn't actually give any type of sufficient points or sufficient reasoning to debunk, like, what I was trying to say. More so, maybe he debunked, like, well, he didn't actually debunk about my attack on his non-clarification because, of course, my response didn't actually attack his point, but it attacked the misrepresentation he did before clarifying. My also critique about him is just, of course, he kept doing these dumb yes or no questions when I can simply answer and actually attack the affirmative claims coming from the yes or no questions, because he was saying, oh yeah, it's not a rap trap, seiba, it's not a rap trap. When if I answered yes or no, it can have further implications which make me look retarded, because obviously speaking wise, him saying, oh yeah, I have to do your role for you, I have to do your role for me, is just making more claims and sitting there saying that wise. So obviously, if you want to mention the amount of backtracking with the definition thing, again, I'm going to sit here and say the bilateral point, me saying it's bilateral when in comparison to subjective experience, still affirms there could be mind-dependent things existing and, of course, physical things that are concrete in type of objective things. That refers to physical things. A physicalist would accept the physical things. When I say everything, of course, that would refer to physicalist things. Everything in existence in physicalist things, I said that's an implication within physicalist things that would refer to physical things. Otherwise, that's a contradiction towards the stance. So obviously, I didn't bring up a contradiction because I included everything. I included everything within a physicalist sense. Because I said that's the implications within a physicalist sense. That's like within the same mark I mentioned that we were debating about the black hole thing. Or no, it was right around the mark where we started getting moderation, but still, my bad. I mentioned the point about it being physicalist. A physicalist accepts physical, concrete things, but it's not the same as physicalism type B, which I made that distinction, by the way. Physicalism type B accepts everything as physical. So, in that case, of course, wise, physicalist and physicalist type B are distinct in terms of stats and analytics through philosophical doctrine. And I think that clarifies that does not backtrack my stance definition whatsoever, because it's not actually affirming the definition Apollo gave for concrete things. Even though I said, oh yeah, that refers to, of course, like concrete things and etc. Right? Of course, refers to physical. Like, yeah, because I affirmed that. Oh yeah. What's wrong with the definition I gave? In that case, again, as I mentioned, the distinction is not like it's not the same as physicalism type B. So even though I replied with yeah, what's wrong with my definition after you said, oh yeah, spatiotemporal things, I still had the reference with physicalist. That's the formal semantics explanation. And this is why I consider the blunders debunked, because first of all, I didn't make any type of backtrack with the logical possibility thing. If you try and mention that, of course, saying that, oh yeah, you gave the conditional but agreed that concrete things exist. Concrete things in existence is agrees with the two propositions provided, not another proposition where it includes the conditional mentioned, which is backed up by substance, by the way. The definition change I already countered, of course, by mentioning, oh yeah, it's physicalist, not physicalism type B, where it affirms everything is physical. The definition point, which he did not track, and I beat his ass on that. The other definition, which would include, what was it? The other point, yeah, the other definition, yeah. His agreement saying, oh yeah, my definition is out of alignment because he can't track like the bozo he is. So, the second point, which would be the, oh yeah, I did also ask him, oh yeah, which are we operate under? Or, like, are you saying that to argue under your definition or agree to your definition? And he just didn't answer until like 2 attempts after. So I mean, just being retarded. Apollo, you're doing a great job. I still think Apollo is a pretty good debater. I'm just saying that I think I beat him when actually you dive into the substance of the conversation. The only point where I would say it's in Kanan where he like, oh, where we both went in con is because both of our points really didn't attack one another. I attacked his, not clarified point while not actually attacking the point about the singularity. He beat me on the, well, he didn't attack my point though, because, he just clarified his point afterwards, so I'm just saying that's in common that. If anything, I'd say I won the debate at mid difficulty because the in-con thing would just label the thing as mid diff because low diff would say I won most of the points, but obviously the point being discussed upon the black hole is drained of that. And of course, he didn't provide the argument for God. We just debated on meta-ontology and like had mostly a semantics debate. But yeah, that's like my analysis for blunders and everything, clarification of the debate and why I think I won. Yeah, that's about it. See you later, folks.